Welcome to the Financial Advisory Regular Board Meeting today, June 27th at about 10:15. First thing is a call to order. Do we have a quorum? I think we do. You run a roll call?
Member Chapelier,
Present.
Member Siegel is absent. Member Fidelli. Member Zarelli is absent. Vice Chairperson Greenwald
Present.
and Member Cornfeld
Here.
and Chairperson Riyami
Present.
and Finance Director Delini.
Present, Delina.
Delina, excuse me.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First order of business is to welcome our new board member, Maggie Chapelier. Thank you, Maggie, for serving.
Thank you very much.
And then an approval of the agenda. Is everybody, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's approved. Any public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes of March 21st, 2024. Do I have
Move to approve the minutes.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We don't have any unfinished business. So the new business, the annual comprehensive fiscal report, our audited report for 2023. Are we doing anything about that, or are we just ratifying it, or? Oh, good morning. Oh, we're gonna present this. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Susie Matthews. I'm the senior accountant here at the town of Highland Beach. And I've been with the town for over 3 years. And today I will be giving you a brief overview of the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2023. Before I jump into the numbers, I would like to thank our town manager and finance director for giving me the opportunity to present this report today. And so, the slides won't show? Okay, I guess we're having a little technical difficulty here. So I will just run through the highlights, which are included in the actual financials, the report that you have in your hands. So overall, the town's asset plus deferred inflows of resources exceeded its liabilities by over 1.36 million over last year's 25 million. And so 6.5 million of this amount can be used for meeting the town's ongoing obligations to citizens and to our creditors. Is it? Okay. Okay, so we have the PowerPoints printed. So I'll just summarize, I just summarized for the government-wide statements, and I'll just drill down a little bit based on the funds. So for the governmental side of life, which includes the government funds, the building department funds, as well as the special revenue funds, the overall activities was 17.8 million, and there was an increase of 3 million over last year, which was attributable to the interlocal agreement that we have with Gulfstream for providing permitting services, as well as the increase in property values. The expenses, there was an increase of 3.3 million over last year. And this was because of the costs that were allocated for outsourcing of the permitting services for provider cap government, as well as the increase in spending for implementation of our new fire department. So at that point, by the end of last year, we had already purchased our fire equipment, the fire vehicle, and some of the other high-priced resources that we needed to implement the fire department. So we'll move on to the business type activities, and the business type or the proprietary funds includes the water and the sewer departments. So overall, so I'm on page 2 of our slide, and this section deals with our long-term debt obligations. So as you could see, on the governmental activities side, there was a total of $735,000. For the business activities, it was $7.14 million, and overall total for this year was 7.8 million, which was reduced by over $1 million compared to the prior year. The next slide. Fund balance represents the residual amount in the particular fund after we deduct our liabilities from our assets. This basically serves as an indicator of the fund's financial health and its ability to meet its obligations. So for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2023, our overall net position, the change was a reduction of over 354,000. And as you can see, for the general fund, the net change was over $3 million. And this negative change was because of the spending that we did for the fire department. And so while the net position went down, our assets, which is on our assets increased by over $3 million. So where am I? So for the enterprise funds or the proprietary funds, there was an increase of over 699,000, which was 15.8% increase over last year. And this was as a result of the increase in rates, as well as the debt service transfers that was made out of from the general fund into the enterprise funds. There was an increase in expenses as well, and that was due to the increase in operating expenses due to inflation, as we know, and increase in levels of our capital projects. As of September 30th, 2023, the general fund's unassigned balance was a little over 987,000. And the funds has been designated for assignments of budget stabilization, disaster recovery, as well as fire rescue that was assigned by the board. So just to wrap up, again, another year of, we received a clean audit. And last year when this presentation was given, our finance director was adamant that we would not have a late report. He said he wanted to have the report done by March 31st of this year. We were not able to hit that March deadline, but the reports were published as of April 30th, which was 2 months in advance of where we were last year. And so with that said, last year, we had 2 audit findings, and one was that we needed a debt service account open to account for the FRS loans that we have. And we were able to have that implemented. And so we got our debt service certification for last year. And so for this year, I'm happy to report that we completed our audit on time. We cleared out all our prior year audit findings, and we have 0 audit findings for this year. That's a very proud moment for all of us here at the town, because 0 audit findings are not by coincidence. It is a combined effort of the finance department team, which is led by David Delina here. We have myself, Deidre, and we've had help from Skender. And of course, our esteemed town manager here has been behind us all the way, making sure we achieve our goals. He's been very supportive. And so at times when we felt like we wouldn't be able to get the audit over the hump, we were pushed over. And so I'm very happy to say that we've completed the audit with 0 findings. And so we look to push on to this fiscal year, which we have so many exciting things in this current year, including the implementation and the opening of our new fire station. So with that said, that's the highlight of our FY 2023 audit. Any questions?
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation and congratulations on the no recommendations and a clean audit
Thank you.
report. That's, I know, not so simple, so congratulations on that. Having said that, do you have any concerns at all that might not have risen to the level of official recommendations or anything that we should know about?
No concerns at all. I think we at the town, we're a great team. We're very collaborative. We support each other, and we're basically, our mantra in the finance department is to do it right the first time. And I think for this audit, for the prior year, we had implemented a new software. We were trying to get through that, as well as we had new auditors. And so for this year, it was a little bit easier. We tried to improve our efficiencies in our task. And so I think for FY 24, we're gonna be even better, because as we go, we try to keep our numbers straight, and we try to keep up to make it timely, so that our team or manager can make decisions, because the information is timely, so it's relevant to making decisions. So no other than the fact that I think we're going to be even better for this year, no concerns at all.
So one specific question. How much money can be accumulated in the building fund before that starts to raise questions? Because I know it was brought up in the past that the building fund is a specific fund, isn't really allowed to become a profit center.
Good sharing. Yes.
And that money from that can be spent for money,
One.
of course, for the building fund or buildings for the building fund. Some of it can be used for shared purposes. But they're not allowed to really function as a profit-making center on an ongoing basis. And obviously, they've been very successful with their operations. And is there an answer to, like, are they allowed to accumulate $1 million year over year, or does that have to stop at some point?
Yeah, so you'll notice that when we talk about general government, they separate out the building fund. And you're absolutely right, Doctor, that the reason why they separate that out is because by Florida statute, you can't just accumulate funds in there for building permits and whatnot. So you can carry 1 year's worth of operating expenditures based on a 4-year historical average. And so you look back at your 4-year historical average and you say, okay, this is our average expenditures, so I can accumulate this amount of money. Or I can have basically in reserves before I have to start looking at what we charge for permits and whatnot. So yeah, we'll look at that, and we do have that balance. We're getting close to that. What I mean by that is if I think it's and it's on one of my slides in the budget presentation, I think we're at like $2.7 million. And so annually, if they do $2 million, we're about $700,000 over what we're allowed to have. But every year, when you're thinking about a 4-year average, that latest year, our operating expenditures were low. Our operating expenditures continue to increase. And so that fluctuates. But to answer your question directly, yes, staff is watching it. We look at what we can have in there. We look at the needs of the governmental funds, and we allocate it appropriately. So,
Can you project out budgets, the permit income, which is very high right now? Obviously, there are a lot of homes being built. I'm sure the permit fees are significant.
Yeah.
But that's not going to last. Are
Yeah.
you allowed to make an argument that what's going on today in 4 years will be half of what, make a number?
yeah, you can. You also have to remember that this is a kind of a unique situation, right? Our department has been successful, not only in and of itself, but we've also added on the interlocal agreement through our partnership with Gulfstream. Okay, and so we basically took on their whole building activity. And so to answer your question, yes, we obviously we do see a little bit of downturn here in Highland Beach as far as building permits and whatnot. But you also have to understand there's a delay. Okay, like let me give you an example. Across the road here, we've got construction going on a new property. It was just demolished and now they're building it up. It'll be 2 years before we get those revenues. You know what I mean? Because they have to go through certain phases of construction and certain phases of the permit before we establish what is the real value of that piece of property. So even you're right, it does fluctuate more than any other government fund. The building department fluctuates tremendously, but right now it's still strong. And when we're down, it seems like Gulfstream continues to improve. And so it is a good partnership. And so we do look at that. Our predictions for next year are very conservative as far as the amount of revenue coming in. But we have this hybrid method where our fixed costs are such that as building increases, our variable costs will also increase. And as building activity decreases, well, we outsource a lot of that inspection work. And so therefore our costs will also decrease. So it is a good hybrid method and we look at that very close. We look at that every month.
Okay, thank you.
So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
And you know, I will tell you, I couldn't do whatever it is I do. I couldn't be as successful or anything without Susie and other staff. They keep me on point. They do the little things so I can focus on the bigger picture, right? We're making sure that every bank account is reconciled by the 5th of every month. That usually starts our process. Once she tells me that she's done recording everything, I download it into a spreadsheet, look for any holes. Are we missing anything? Did we get this bill? Where's this bill? So she's excellent. And that's what's needed is somebody whose attention to detail, no matter what the dollar limit is or how little the dollar limit is. She's on everyone for their recorded expenditures. If they use the credit card, where's the receipt? So and what happens is that just keeps we keep marching that ball down to the finish line every month because we're tenacious about it. And yeah, and the town manager, it seems like once September 30th hits, he's always asking me, where's my audit? Where's my audit? So he's pushing in the right direction as well. And you know, it all flows downstream. We got on to our auditors. The reason why is because county governments, their audited financial statements are due before these municipalities. So a lot of these auditing firms, they put all their resources into working on the county-wide audited financial statements, and they kind of leave us municipalities, you know, last on their list. But we close our books by the end of September. We're leaving accounts payable open until November to get those last payables in. And by December, you know, we're giving them trial balances ready to audit. And so it is, we will pick up more speed, but this was a very successful endeavor. So I'm thankful for my staff keeping me on track every month out of the 12 months. So that a year end is just another month end close. And so, thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you very much. It was great. Obviously, the town, your department is doing very well and the town's doing very, very well.
Yep.
And I think we can all look forward to a reduction in our property taxes possibly.
Well, we'll go over that.
Yeah.
A lot of pressures on.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not this month. Okay, so next is the proposed operating budget for this year. Obviously, we're doing well with the Gulfstream little side business.
Well, they get started and kind of figure out how to use a computer. I just want to kick off as I had for the commission with the statement that our financial health has never been stronger. It really hasn't. And it is quite remarkable that we're able to execute. And what you'll hear from David as we move through this, outside of the accomplishments we made last year, the strategic priorities and projects moving forward, David said something to the commission I think is kind of fun to say is we're succeeding because we're working the plan. Our 5-year forecast model that we deployed 2 years ago is holding true. The commission is committed to holding to that, which is, and I know I heard Mr. Riami say, lowering taxes, but the idea was stabilizing, and that was the whole goal of that 5-year forecast model, stabilizing the millage, because now we've made a huge investment in fire. We have a payback period of a little bit short of 6 years. I would venture that we're going forward, it could be a little bit less. So this year, what you will see from this budget presentation is our ability to fund all operations. We're going to save over $1.2 million compared to operating through the city of Delray Beach, which was true to our plan to execute fire, that we would recognize these savings. Those are bearing out. We use cash reserves to pay for half of the construction station, for the station construction. And the other part of it is that we're able to put in over $340,000 back into reserves. Now, what that is going to allow us to do is when we looked at that forecast over 5 years, is that you will see when David goes through the presentation, the property values, while strong again, I just got the preliminaries from Dino at the property appraiser. Our growth rate at 8.8% is one of the lower ones in the county. So we're starting to see this come down. The lowest was Manalapan at 5% growth. We're at 8.8%. So we're starting to trend downward on the value of property growth, which, as David will show you, is approximately 80% of all of our revenues come from property tax. So the idea of holding with the forecast is in years like this, where we can put money back into reserve in the short period, is going to help us in the latter years, where we're probably not going to be able to generate enough full revenue where we could take a few dollars out of reserves. So instead of moving millage rates and having all these meetings every year, fluctuating the millage rate based on property growth, we kind of go down the middle. We kind of trend down the middle. So some years we'll be able to add to reserves, like what we think was next year. Other years where we'll start to fall below that trend line, where we can hold millage rates, not have to raise to fill the gap for the revenue side of it. So our plan, we're executing it, is working well. And that's kind of where we gave the commission and they felt comfortable. But again, they want to hear from the FAB, and that's why we got it here this year. And I'm glad we got it earlier in the process. Traditionally, I know Dr. Greenwald had brought this to their attention. Traditionally, we don't come to you guys until July, and then, the commission's already had 3 cracks at the budget. So, they've kind of already set the stage. So right now you kind of still have an open canvas. Recommendations are encouraged if you think there's something that they should take a closer look at. We're comfortable with our budget. We believe it holds to the plans that we have put in place and funds it. And the one thing I would tell you, as we look at the budget overall, most of our costs for the general fund, not any of the enterprise funds. So don't think water, sewer, and building. They have their own revenue stream based on a fee-based structure. Your tax dollars doesn't support those operations. Fees do. You do pay it in your water, or you do pay it in the building fees. In the general fund, almost all of our cost really comes from police and fire. Now we're a standalone community, full service, where we have police and fire. I will tell you this now, and you'll be reminded by this in latter years when we have budget years that are a little bit skinnier. Public safety costs never go down. Public safety costs never go down. Okay, so their union structures, their costs go up. You're not going to cut back on police officers. We want to maintain that safety. The ability to cut back in fire rescue, you can't just start cutting shifts off. So basically their costs we control it, but it continues to grow each year. Your property values come down, costs continue to go. And that's really the premise for the 5-year forecast, is when we can add to reserves, we're adding in anticipation that there can be years out on the model where, at some point in time, we're not going to have all of the revenue, and we're going to have to budget by bringing over reserves into operations to balance a year until we move forward. So I guess I'll start off here. Again, some of the accomplishments. Again, the biggest thing, as you all know, is fire. Implementing the first fire rescue department in the county in 35 years was no small feat, but we executed that starting May 1 of this year, and we completed the construction. It was an $8.6 million project. 8.53 was the original contractor estimate that we executed. Final project came in at 7.7 million. So, and we delivered it on time and under budget. So that was another great accomplishment. We passed 3 referendum. We've got the charter spending limit moved up. I put $1 million. It's probably about 940 because if you remember, it's 900,000 and then adjusted annually for the MSA CIP, which is how Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach moves. So our $900,000 moves year to year on CPI adjustments for what we could spend in one singular capital expenditure or expansion of operations. The ability to canvassing doesn't seem like the most exotic, but it's been kind of frustrating for Linelda. And because the supervisor of elections really is not wanting to work with, at this point, not wanting to work with local canvassing boards. So this gives us the ability to work more freely with the county when the supervisor of election doesn't want to participate locally. We secured our second state appropriation, which is great. Again, special thanks to Representative Gossett-Seidman for helping us push this through for lift station number 2. So 2 years in a row, we've been able to procure general appropriations. We missed the one on sewer lining. We'll talk about that, what we plan to move forward because we did secure community approval for that. We approved some sea turtle lighting, beach erosion management dune study that is out. That will be kicked back now over to the Natural Resource Advisory Board. Is going to help how we communicate that message out because we did a property by property dune assessment. I thought it was a great study, allows us to take a look and something that we have to execute probably every 5 to 10 years to kind of keep an eye on it. But the Natural Resource Board is going to work on rolling that out to the community. Next, David. And then all the capital projects that we're able to do. And that's another theme that from this year and in next year is we're still staying focused on critical capital projects, the infrastructure that we need to fix and repair that have been entrusted to us to manage over time. We have the dollars to address. So this year, you know, these are usually not the most exciting, you know, fence replacement. It's a bigger project than you think, but we have a new fence along the property line, media replacement. So that's in the scrubber tower off the treatment plant. Not a very exciting thing, but it's very critical to delivering clean water to the community. Sanitary sewer rehabilitation for the library. There was a belly in the line, so we had a lot of backups. Raised lift station number 2. Again, that's our continual addressing of our climate vulnerability of our assets as those were built too low with the anticipation of sea level rise. So we're systematically moving that forward. And those are the ones that the legislator and the governor's office has graciously agreed to partner in funding with us. Pipe well coating. We started the design of the Bellito Bridge. We want an update on the structural engineering on that. And then next year, when you see what our strategic priorities is to make those repairs to the bridge. That is the singular bridge we do have, and we have to take care of it. Town entry signs, you don't see them today. We've been wrestling around with FDOT, but we should have them before fiscal year end. So I put it as an accomplishment. You will see the 2 signs north and south end of town before fiscal year end. Water plant blower replacement, Motorola radios. I saw Chief Hartman bouncing around. We had the whole new radios. We were able to execute that. It was $300,000 for emergency communication equipment. Gas pump dispenser. That thing was falling down, but now we got a new one. Electrical panel upgrade in one of our other lift stations. And you wouldn't think a generator muffler replacement would rise to a capital project, but that was $100,000 for a muffler on that huge generator we have. Next. So then what are we doing, again, before David gets into all the details, with what are we budgeting for or addressing with the new budget that we're presented to the commission and to you today? Our 75th anniversaries, festivities, we're going to start working on that. I'm working with Madison in my office and the commission. We are going to be putting together a little ad hoc committee to start planning what that is. So commissioners may reach out to you to ask you to participate. But we're going to start planning. Those are some big ideas out there. One of the commissioners said fireworks. So we're talking some big stuff here, make a real exciting program. We're hoping for multiple days of events to kind of celebrate our diamond anniversary here in Highland Beach. Marine accessory structure ordinance. We've been working through that for years. We should have that delivered next year. Ingrid's working through all those pieces. Again, lift stations, another exciting project. I have a meeting later today with the architects is rehabilitation of the old fire station. What are we going to do If you don't believe me, it's bad. I'll be more than glad to schedule a walkthrough of how bad that structure is. And I'm glad we didn't put anybody in it, moving forward with our new, fire operation. So we need to do something with that space. And what we've been working with the commission on is demoing the old living quarters and whatnot, putting in a couple public restrooms for special events, have a little roll-up doors on the side of the base, and then we'd have a community space for food truck events, outdoor concerts, green markets, just normal community events that have been over the last 5 years that we've been seeing a lot of success with. Now we'll have a venue for that. Again, Bolito bridge repairs, some resurfacing in the complex. We kind of beat it up, building the fire station. Police department dock design. Again, we have a marine unit, but we have no dock. Thank you to the condo groups that are allowing us to dock in their space. Ron, thank you. But again, we're going to be working on building a docking facility behind the library, and that also doubles with rescue, so we can do on-water rescues and bring people onto the campus, so we can get them to a hospital if so be it. Water treatment membrane, side ports, yada, yada, nothing too exciting, but we got to take care of the water treatment plant. Again, you'll see FDART. Right now, you see them rolling out silt fence, folks. It's going to get a little bit hairy when season comes along, when they're really in the thralls of construction. SCADA equipment, again, that's all the software that operates our plant. Again, I believe this capability is improving over the years, so we can do some other remote access to that. Annual vehicle repairs. We're looking at how we're going to address sewer lining. We didn't get the $850,000 in a state appropriation, but our lobbyist is working feverishly with the DEP. There are other grant dollars that we have been told by the governor's office that is available. So we're going to work some of those angles, get some help from Representative Gossett-Seidman, see if we can't get some grants. And if not, there is the state revolving fund, which is a low interest loan program, or we break the project into smaller projects, because the community might be fatigued after FDOT project to have us sitting in the right of way for another 8 months fixing the sewer. So maybe we break it into smaller projects. Those are forthcoming. Degasification system, it's rusting out. Got to take care of that. Beach vehicles are all beat up. The salt just tears those things apart. AC repairs, just normal wear and tear in the buildings, and new entry doors in town hall. Huge gaps in the doors. So get those going. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to David to get you into the details.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
The sewer relining project, which we've been talking about for probably at least 3 or 4 years now.
Right.
And it keeps getting moved. I didn't really see much in the budget. Is that going to be like a supplementary in the proposed budget?
Well,
Because it gets to the point where I begin to wonder whether, when we were told 4 years ago that this was something that needed to be done, whether that assessment was just wrong, or whether we're at the point where we're, starting to take real risks by not actually moving ahead with some alacrity and actually getting this done.
yes and yes. It's been a long run. Once we started getting into the design, we spent a lot of money evaluating the system. Was kind of like the first of those 4 years. Second year is kind of developing the cost. We went out to bid over our spending cap. We didn't get appropriations. We didn't have the money. Got the community approval. We do have the money. Now we're trying to, based on that cost, do the whole system. Do we do it in smaller breaks, which increases the cost if you have to mobilize multiple times? We've been told there's some grant dollars that seem very attractive, so maybe go get some state dollars. But again, we're going to start this project one way or another. We have to start it. We're open to ideas, and I think the commission is listening. If we now have the ability to do it, we've been authorized by the voters to do this project one way or another. So we could do the side streets and neighborhoods first during the FDOT project. So we're not in the right of way to have FDOT mess. We'll just go into the neighborhoods and frustrate them some. Sorry. But, fix those parts first, then come back and hit we're just trying to figure out collectively what options the commission has to authorize us moving forward, or we wait till FDOT's done and we just do the whole project. I mean, that's probably the most cost effective, but is there that resident fatigue? If we get an SRF, if we have to borrow money because we don't want to lay out the cash because the cost of the project could be the 3 million, 2 to 3 million. We don't really know. That's why we picked a big number. We might have to borrow some monies, and that's why we're exploring with the state revolving fund, which is a low interest, 1-2% loan to do a project. So those things we're trying to figure out. We can handle it on a year-to-year basis with cash, but we can't do all the project. It'll be smaller, but there might be an appetite for that to keep the congestion down in the right of way.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that given the residents' vote on approving this whole issue last March, you know, the images that were presented originally years ago about the potential for sewage starting to bubble up in the streets kind of thing, I think is
It's real.
a reasonable impetus to that most people are going to want to see this project become accomplished. And it's unfortunate, obviously, that the governor line vetoed the $875,000 that we might have gotten, but it's still something that I think many people would feel should go forward. I know that's a town commission decision, but
Yeah, and we
just
are.
looking at it from the budget standpoint, it was like, okay, so where is this? You know, expecting to see it.
The good thing is, you know, the only thing is, how do we want to do it? It's already designed. It's a shelf-ready project. We have the design complete. We know what we have to do. We have all the measurables. We have the engineering specs. It's now, how do we want to now execute? We have authorization from the community. I would love to get grant dollars to buy it down. It's always the best way to go, or a low-interest loan to execute a full project. But you're right. We got to do it. It's not gotten any better. So that is a project that I would like to get done sooner rather than later, because it has been, we kind of pushed it. We got the ARP money. We thought we would do that. It exceeded all of the ARP money, the cost of the project. We initially thought it was like $1 million and we were going to use the ARPA dollars. The bids came in at 2.5, only had 2 bidders. It looked like collusion more than an open bid environment. So we needed to go out to bid and come up with a new way to approach it. So that's really the last little touch, and we hope to address that soon so we could do something next year. And even if it is just I see some value, and I guess I'll have to let the commission tell me if I'm crazy. Do we pick up the neighborhoods and side streets first? Then we have FDOT done and the sides, and then we're just hitting A1A, and then we can just start to finish progressively.
The estimated cost is 5 million? Was that, am I right?
No, I bet you it's about 3.
3.
To be comfortable, we got authorization to 3.5. I'm hoping it's less.
Okay.
Because when we first bid it out, there was a shortage of the polymer for lining. So they said, oh, we can get it, but now it's 3 times the cost than it was last year. So that's what drove all the prices up, and the contractors really didn't want to come in, and they were busy doing other projects. So they gave us we'll do it, but you're going to pay us this much. So we're hoping now that the supply chain has stabilized a little bit over the last 18 months, last 8 months, it's gotten much better, but you know.
Well, based on our current cash and funds that we have and reserves, are you saying we can't pull $3.5 million from somewhere to do it now? Which is a couple-year project, obviously.
We probably could, but it would wipe out.
Yeah, we'll go
Yeah, we'll go over. It'll wipe out pretty much all of our reserves. And I don't know that is the best way to do it. If we're going to use cash only instead of taking borrowing or getting a grant, and we have to do it all ourselves, you know, that's where the value of breaking it up into a series of smaller projects. Now that we can, because we were argued before we can't do it in smaller projects because we were trying to get it. People were thinking we were trying to get around the 350 cap. Now that we're authorized, we have more flexibility too in how we address the project.
We seem to be very good with utilization of funds. Like the fire department is an example of what we can do. And if I'm agreeing with what I'm hearing, we were told this has to get done. It's going to be sewers in the garbage in the streets. It's going to be a major problem. If it is, then we should do it. And if we're as good as we have been up until now, to find the funds to do it. And this is not a 1-year project. Maybe it's some.
We need to be prepared. We need to be prepared quickly. So I'm glad it's shelf ready. I am a little nervous with the FDOT project weight of equipment, vibrations, things could jostle a few of the weak points during the FDOT project, which is going to force us potentially to act a little bit sooner. I hope not. Hope it just, everything goes smoothly, right? You always hope for that, plan for the worst. So we're ready to go. We can bid it out tomorrow. We just, it's the funds now, because if it's the whole thing we got to do, cash gets a little bit tricky. And it'll be a bigger
So if
action
we-
of the commission.
I mean, if we kick the can down, and we've already kicked it for a while, if we kick it a little more and do it all at once, that's a better option financially, and then also gives us time to try to get more grant money.
Well, the grant money is available now. SRF is now. So the only problem with the SRF, as one would imagine, when you work with a state federal cooperative to do these things, takes 12 to 18 months to finally get shovel ready because of their process. The only reason why I know that is right at 25 years ago, 26 years ago, that's what I did for a different state, was work through the SRF program. So it does take a while to get your hands on the federal dollars, then it goes through these groups. So if we do that route, it'll take longer, but we do secure really attractive financing. Sometimes they forgive parts of the loan. It's pretty attractive if we decide to do the whole thing. If not, and those are things that we have to kind of unfold quickly. Right now, our lobbyist is up talking with DEP as we speak. Like we're doing the grant and SRF stuff now. Like, is there money? What does that application look like? So we should know more answers over the next several months. But we're ready to go. We have some money in anticipation. But if we have to say we got to do it all, FDOT's not going to let us in. So we can't do it now. During the FRS, during the FDOT project, we can't get in the right of way. So A1A is shut down to us for at least a year. So that's why I was thinking maybe we could hit the side neighborhoods, but people in the neighborhoods or the side streets might get upset because, man, we're already wrestling with, A1A. Now you're going to put a big operation. It's not that big. Sewer lining isn't that intrusive, but we would be in the neighborhoods working. So it's kind of a tricky because FDOT's not going to let us in.
So it's not dangerous not to do it right now. It's just saying, but you really don't know.
We don't know. I mean,
But-
there are vulnerabilities in the system that have to be addressed.
I've
We have
al-
two fractures. Now, if we see anything, it's going to be on the north side of town. For those that live up the north side, apologize. But those are a couple of spots where we have some disjointment on some of the lines. If it's going to break. The other stuff is just old. It's already kind of leak. So it's already happening. We just need to address it before the collapse. And that and it don't think the whole system collapsing. It's going to be points. And then we got to bypass and then fix. And then we have to dig up everyone's front. It's messy.
And expensive doing it that way.
They do it at, start doing it at, 2:00 in the morning. Yeah. It gets pricey quickly.
Are there any efficiencies? Are there any efficiencies in when you rely on a sewer system? Do you pick up efficiencies in pumping power, hydraulics from an efficiency standpoint? Because there's monies available for energy reduction projects through the the Inflation Recovery Act, that if you drop the power consumption on a particular project, they now cut a check directly to cities and not-for-profits versus having to basically amortize that with somebody else.
That's interesting. We didn't think to that angle. I don't know, because it's mostly gravity. So the pump stations are the energy draw, and we got those funded from the state. But it's really because it's old pipe, right? It tuberculated. When you have the cast iron, stuff builds up. The capacity is reduced. Cracks around joints, things of that nature. So there's clean water getting in, which means we're paying for treating rainwater, right? So that's some of the cost efficiencies. Or once we replace the line, we don't get clean water in. But if those holes get big enough and there's enough weakness and it collapses, then sewage stops and goes up.
So
That's what we don't want, is to surface or to spread even underground in a porous environment. We wouldn't want either of those conditions.
So I was wondering if you look at the additional infiltration, which puts additional pumping capacity into the system, which increases the pumping power necessary. If we could prove that we knock out that additional capacity in the pipeline and minimize infiltration, that might, again, bring efficiency to the pumping power. I'm just saying there may be dollars there.
We'll take a look. I mean, like we're turning over everything to see what's available, but you're right. We need to get on it. We're now fully authorized as of March. So we can do what it takes now. We can be as creative as we need to be to address that project. But it is the last, I don't want to say the last, but it's a major project that we have to do.
Could I ask about the library, not the library, the post office? What happened with the post office closing?
So that was a sequence of events over time. So I believe the post office just doesn't want to support the community post office system. So basically, systematically over the years, they took away our ability to do services. So we used to be just anything you did at the post office, you could do here. So what they started saying is you couldn't do money orders. Okay. Then change of address. You can't do change of address here. You'd have to go to another. You can't send packages that would be tracked. They won't allow us to do tracking packages. Then they said, we're taking our credit card machines. Can't do credit cards, when that was 90% of our transactions, as Lenelda, researched for us. So we said, okay, we'll put our own credit card machine in, and we'll eat a little bit more cost, because it cost us, if we were to put in the budget this year, it'd probably be almost $200,000 to $180,000 to maintain that. We said, we put our post up, we could do it. And they said, well, you have to reconcile every day. At the end of the day, you'd have to reconcile all sales and give us a check at the end of each business day, not the end of the week, end of the month, or quarter, every day. Well, if that's to be done under our charter, which is another issue, is to write a check at the end of the day, it would have to go through like 3 or 4 steps through the accounting process, because we have a very systematic way in which it goes in. So somebody would have to close it, reconcile. But this is while the post office guy is collecting, waiting. So he's not going to wait forever. So we got to do this in like a half hour, let's say.
Oh.
We'd have to enter in all this balance for the day, go over to the accounting department, have Susie enter it in. Then it has to have dual authentication authorized to pay it. So David and I have to approve that transaction. Then we have to go through another system to generate the checks. Then I have to sign the check, and we have to get a commissioner in here every day to sign. So it just effectively wasn't there, and they didn't want to support it. They weren't interested in being flexible. They said, all you could do is cash only. And they were considering other removals of certain, it came to a point where obviously they didn't want us to do it. So from a fiscal and just a point of view, that it was time to move forward from that. Again, since we've closed, we still get a lot of foot traffic. No one's from town. It was basically, it's because it's still on Google. Everybody comes here. It's a beautiful spot. Well, why wouldn't you want to come to Highland Beach to do your postal work? So we're not getting, it's not a lot of residents that use it. Majority of the users are non-residents. So it was a tough call. I called our legislator, and they're like, of all the things we're working on, chasing down a post office in a small town isn't high on their priority list. So that's how we got to having to close it. And Val was retiring, and she had been here for 25 years. And John was close to, there wasn't the next group to learn. So it just came to a point where it wasn't a good way to go. So
A lot of people have asked me, so I'm just,
yeah, it's just the post office just wasn't a willing and eager partner to maintain the community. Just weren't interested.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So, thank you. Yeah, the sewer project is obviously the next major project. But we've had a lot go on. And one of the things, here's what I want you to look at, right? So between 2019 and 2020, right, property values grew by like 4.5%. Okay. From 20 to 21, they grew by 2.3%. 21 to 22, 3.3. Then we have 23 to 24. We have the skyrocket, right? 13%, over 13%. Another year, over 13%. Now we start to come down. Now, look at what happened with inflation, right? Inflation kind of followed the same curve here, okay? So at the end of the day, what staff is recommending is let's stick to the plan, because here's why. We know, based on historical experience, right? We know these are coming back. The property values will continue to increase, but they're not going to increase at 13 at double digit increases, right? We're still hopeful that here's the other thing too. Back in these days here, remember inflation, how high inflation was? People were setting their prices for the sewer lining project. They had so much work out there. They knew how much ARPA funds each municipality received. So guess what their bid was? Yep, $3 million. How much ARPA did you get? $3 million? Yep, we want all that. But here's what's going to happen, I think, right? So I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a little bit more competitiveness, right? As the economy starts to slow down a little bit, we're going to start to see those companies start being a little bit more competitive. I'm not saying that prices won't continue to increase, because they will, but I think the inflationary timeframe hopefully is behind us. But anyway, this right here is just a precursor of what our taxable values look like. And remember, you know, it's 77% of our general funds revenue. Okay, so here's what we're proposing. We're proposing that the millage, the operating millage, be at 3.4040%. The debt service millage, this is just the fire. In past years, our millage was the operating millage plus the water. Well, now, since we're paying down the debt on the water, we no longer need that millage to get transferred over to the water side. So when you combine those two millages, we maintain as part of our plan to in good times and in bad, to maintain a 3.5875 millage rate. So what does that look like going forward? Well, you can see here, back in 2001, operating millage, this right here was our debt service millage right here. And all that went to the water fund. 2022, same idea. 2023, same idea. 2024, if you recall, we started up the fire department. We took out a small loan, right, to build the fire department. So now it was operating. It was our fire department right here, right? Fire department millage in there. And we also had water. Now what we're looking to do in 2025 is get rid of the water millage, put the fire department debt service millage on our existing millage, but while maintaining, that's what this line is, while maintaining the same rate. All right, let's go. Let's take, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the general fund, big overview general fund. As we said before, 76% of our revenue comes from property taxes. You have all these other ancillary things that we get from the state of Florida, franchise fees. You know, when you pay your electric bill, you know, you'll see a tax in there. You know, that's part of the electric company's franchise fees in there. Sales and use tax, investment earnings, so on and so forth. But the biggest draw here is what I wanted to try to show you in this slide is let's take out the fire department and all that activity that happened. So if I did that, our 2024 general fund budget was about $16.1 million. Okay. Then what we had to do is we did obviously the fire department loan. We did the major construction that brought that budget up to about 22.9 million. Then if I look at, okay, the fire department's done and complete. We're ready to move forward operations as normal. We're looking at our budget to be about $17.5 million for 2025. Now, what's changed? Now what you're looking at is you're looking at here, this right here, we're still on the revenue side. So what's changed? Well, here you can see that property taxes are obviously the main driver. Okay. But you can also see that, look at, we're not bringing into our sources of revenue. We're not bringing in the bank loan, and we're not moving money from our reserves. So you can see that this went up a little bit. These items here went up a little bit, but the main driver here is we're not accounting for the bank loan here, and we're not pulling money from reserves. All right. We looked at the revenue. That's the revenue we need to have a balanced budget. Okay. So here is what the main drivers are. We estimated a 5% for general cost of living increases in salaries, probably around 7 to 10%, maybe in health insurance and whatnot. But when we put all those numbers together, look at what's switched here. Operating expenditures went down, personnel went up. Well, the operating expenditures, that's Delray. That's the Delray contract, right? So that's where our Delray contract, a majority of that there is our Delray contract. And we switched it with our own fire staff. And so at the end of the day, those are kind of the switches. But here's the other thing too, I think that I want you to notice. We're anticipating, I added about $300,000 to this year's budget as a contingency. This will be the first year that we will be running a fully staffed, fully serviced fire department. Okay. I know everything is brand new, right? But I want to just hedge on this, on the side of being conservative and say, you know what? I want to add a little bit of money in there for contingency. If we don't use that, that just drops to the bottom line. Okay. But here's the other thing too, that we're anticipating to do. And as part of our plan of maintaining the millage in good time and in bad, remember, we pulled out $4 million from our reserves. $4 million we pulled out to build that fire department. So this year, we're anticipating adding $642,000 to replenish back our reserves. From the savings account that we pulled money down, we're going to add money back into it with this budget. And that's our plan. So when you look at departments, what are the biggest departments here? Well, we know that police and fire right here. These right here are your big public safety. By far in any community, those are your main cost drivers, right? Now, the reason why this went down so much is because included in the fire rescue was a lot of construction costs. Okay. So that's why that number there went down. But look at what's going up. I'm adding money to for contingencies, and I'm also adding funds back to our reserves. And so at the end of the day, all the other departments seem relatively good. You know, see the library, you remember the post office that we just talked about? That's no longer there. Okay. We also moved legal expenditures. We moved that under the town manager. That's why that's zero. You know, he's got a more direct relationship with legal. And so we thought that, you know what, let's just put that under your purview. Everything is under his purview, but we just figured that accounting wise, it just made sense to move that. Other thing here, look at Public Works. We put $1 million in there. So see, we put a $1 million as a reserve place to consider what are we doing with the old fire station? What do you want to do with the old fire station? Do you want to rehab it? Do you want to add the bathrooms? Do you want to knock it down? Right. But we think that the community is going to want to develop it. We still have to keep the fire station shell there pretty much because we have our backup vehicles in there as well. But so what we did is, as the town manager said, we're working with our architects, we're working with our engineers to come up with a plan at what we can do that. Well, that falls under Public Works. When you see Public Works is your staff and dollars maintaining the general governmental assets here. Let's talk about Money. Now you want to talk about money, okay? Cash balances. This right here is our beginning balance here for 2024. This right here is our ending balance in 2023. If you remember,
Excuse me, can we go back to the expenses for
Sure.
a second?
absolutely.
You have one line, retirement contribution for the fire, $1 million for the year.
Where, I'm sorry, what line are you on?
Retirement contributions for the fire rescue department.
Yeah,
It's $1 million.
yeah,
Prior year, it's hard to tell because the prior year was
yeah. Remember,
allocated.
right, the prior year was allocated to
Yeah.
Delray, right, yeah.
Well, he's showing expenses for salaries for the fire department, 2.7.
Yep.
And $1 million of retirement contributions.
Yep.
There's a relationship between those two.
Yes.
$1 million on 2,000,007.
Yep.
Well, the public safety.
It's about a third, right?
It's gonna cost us at least $1 million a year, every year for retirement.
Yeah. Right.
And we're still gonna save $1,000,001 eventually.
Saving
Oh.
it right now.
Right now.
We're saving it right. Look at what I'm putting into
Including $1 million.
reserves.
I'm just want to make sure I'm
Yeah, yeah.
understanding.
Yeah, no,
Kind of amazing, right? Even at those numbers, we're saving.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes, sir.
And it was gonna be saving more.
If we're talking about specifics like that, if you look at the police department budget.
Yep.
From 21, 22 to the proposed budget.
Yep.
It's gone from roughly 2.67 million to 4.35 million, which is an increase of 60% over 4 years.
Mhm.
And when you break that number down, at least as I'm looking at it, a lot of that has to do with retirement benefits and health benefits and so on
A
and so forth.
marine unit, we added a marine.
No,
unit.
we did. This is not to be at all critical of the
No.
police department, who I think is great. I'm just looking at the numbers.
Yep.
Any kinds of projections going forward? Because if you average that out to 15% a year
Mhm.
over the last 4 years, I mean, the town's in great shape financially. I get all that, but those aren't normally sustainable kinds of numbers.
Yes and no, right? What you'll see in there too is we got into a 3-year contract with the Police Benevolence Association when we negotiated the 3-year contract with fire. I mean, with police, we were markedly under market conditions for pay, like well under, our starting pay was like 52 grand. We weren't recruiting. We had to get to what is the average, not Boca. No one can pay like Boca, right? I mean, they're just that's that community. And some of these other to the south, it gets more expensive precipitously. As you go south, cost of everything goes up. You go to the north, it calms a little bit. So we looked at what everyone's doing. So these costs are going up. FRS, they're starting to stabilize, which is good news, but we're an FRS community. So our pension system is provided, it's compulsory. Everybody but me is in the FRS, and those numbers are for public safety. Was that 32%? So for every dollar in salary, it's 32% we have to send to the state for pension. And then you add the healthcare, this and that. Our multiplier is a little bit high, probably running, I wouldn't say high, it's lower than surrounding communities, but was it 1.6 probably?
Yeah.
We're running about 1.6. I think a sweet spot's about 1.4, 1.45, but we're up to 1. But that's driven mostly by FRS because we've done great on the healthcare side. As you all recall, we've been doing really good holding healthcare costs in line. But this year the FRS only went up, like 3% or not even. It was pretty flat. So that's good news. So FRS is stabilizing. But again, as a state retirement fund, if you look around, the Florida's fund is well funded, if you will, lack of better words. They're at 80, actually has them like 85%, 88%, which is great. That was some of the problem, as we recall with Delray, they had some problems with their pension where they underfunded it for multiple years, where they're funded at, 60%. That's not good if everyone starts retiring. So it seems like it's a lot. And is it unsustainable? I think that's what most communities wrestle with. And we're now embracing it, right? So we have our own fire, we have our own police. as a city manager, I'll tell you, that's cost number one, public safety. And like I said, it doesn't go down. It never goes down. I've never seen a community where, I mean, outside of the Great Recession, yeah, everybody took a haircut at that point. But in normal operating, public safety, you know, they're on step programs. So every year they get their merit and steps until they get to the end, and the cost of it just, that's what we're gonna, you know, and that's all of our costs in the general fund is pretty much, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's what, 80, 70, 70%, 75% is public safety out of your tax dollars. You know, 7 of 10, you know, 70 cents out of every dollar goes to public safety.
No, and all that's fine. And I
Yep.
was certainly in favor of getting our community up to standards with
Right.
other neighboring communities and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But again, when you look at the numbers, that's
Yeah.
percentage wise, at least, is a
Right.
pretty significant increase over a
And-
period of 4 years.
And that's why we're not anticipating, we had to play a little catch up because of, as the town manager mentioned, we were a little bit behind the scale, behind the pay scale. Okay. And so we had to play a little bit of catch up with their step plan, but that kind of levels out a little bit. But this is why this is so important in the good times to start putting money back into reserves. You know, that's been our mantra. Hey, listen, you have a concierge fire department and police department, top notch. No other community has that. And at the end of the day, you know, that's why anticipating those increases, especially in the general fund, not so we'll get to the water, sewer and building department and whatnot, but the general fund, yeah, it's definitely.
And I'll put a shameless plug in. You know, we caught up, but again, we still have the third lowest tax rate. So there's other communities like us, but their tax, you know, we're talking 3.58. A lot of these communities like Juno Beach, 5.5, Tequesta, 6.8. So, I mean, we're like half of the operating that those communities are carrying. So, you know, good for us that we have good, strong tax base. But again, we're also managing by keeping our tax rate really low. I think Manalapan and town of Palm Beach I just can't catch them for you. They just keep it just below, but they're not, you know, Palm Beach is hard to compete with. They're a little bit bigger, 30,000 people. Billionaires Row. I mean, it's a little daunting task, but they're always the lowest. Manalapan, but they don't, you know, they're 400 people. It's a small town. So, we do keep our tax rate really low for the county and can do what David was saying is provide that concierge kind of service and be prepared moving forward to provide that service directly to the residents. And again, like, you know, now that we have a fire department, condos aren't paying the annual inspection fees anymore. Those are free. We're just going to come out and work with you. So that's that touch, that community touch that we're allowed or have the ability to provide.
Yeah, all good.
Yep.
It is sort of ironic, I think, that a few years ago, both on this board and at the commission level, there was an argument being made that we had way too much money in our reserves and that we should start spending the money in our reserves. And now we're at the point where I think financially it's like starting to make people feel a little bit better if we have a little bit more money back in our reserves.
Yeah. And
So it's interesting to see how things cycle, obviously.
yeah, no, absolutely. And listen, no other municipality has done what you have done. There is no other municipality that has what you have here, which I believe just goes to protect your property values. I mean, it's phenomenal what you have here. And so at the end of the day, but not only that though, but remember, we had to meet a deadline of transitioning our fire department. We had to get that building done. We had to bring on 24 firemen and women, and we had to get that thing up and running by May 1. And so we did it.
So by bringing on our own fire department, our own employees there, we inherit the legacy cost on the retirement, correct?
No, no legacy cost.
Oh,
No,
good.
no. So when they become employees of the town of Highland Beach, right, they come to they start day one on ours. There's no legacy behind it. No past fire pension costs needed.
They're all double dipping anyway.
Uh,
But the,
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good idea to spend the reserves. I mean, there was a
Yeah.
good reasons
Yeah,
for it.
no.
And also this whole, the public safety thing, thank you 9/11. Because after 9/11.
Yeah.
It just went through the roof.
But
And
again,
has every year since.
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And but we are so many years ahead of schedule if we would have stayed. If we would have stayed, you know what? If we would have stayed, we would have got done with the sewer lining. Yeah, you're right. We would have. But the cost that contract would have placed on this town is unfathomable. And we'll show you, that's what allows us to not only run a better fire department, a more efficient, not only to give all the condos a break on fire inspection fees, not only give more staff to protect you and your property, but as we see here, we're dropping money back into our reserves for when those property values start to grow at 2%. Okay, so anyway, so here's what we're looking at. So if you were to go to your audited financial statements, you would see the general fund balance at $7.054 million. We're adding $250,000 in this fiscal year to that balance. So that brings us to $7.3 million. Now, what we're proposing here is that number there goes up to here as the beginning balance. We're proposing that we continue to add money to our reserves to bring it to continue to grow. This is what your allocation of that balance would be. We have, per our resolution by the board, we have money put away for budget stabilization, money put away for disaster. We have a fire rescue. We started to put that away. You know why? Because down the road, we're going to have to be replacing some very expensive equipment. So you know what we're going to do? In good times, we're going to squirrel money away so that when we have to do that, we're not taking out loans. We're not leasing things. We're buying them. And so this right here becomes your unassigned balance. When we put that $642,000 in 25 into that, that's what your balance will be. This right here is a nice, this right here just represents what your balances, what your excess reserve funds, how they're allocated. And so it is very strong. It's what the GFOA recommends, and we're in good shape. Now let's go to, so now what we're going to do is we're going to leave the general fund. Okay. So now we're going into discretionary sales tax. Discretionary sales tax fund. The reason why it's a separate fund is because it's restricted, right? I can't use these dollars to pay the electric bill, right? I can't use it to pay lawn mowing services and things like that. So this right here is a fund that the state of Florida set up. It's an additional 1% tax on the first $5,000. Okay. That is allocated to all the municipalities in Palm Beach County. And so, but this right here is the revenue side of life. This right here is $711,000. We're expecting to get $415,000 this year. Historically, we've gotten 422. We already are at 241. I'm estimating that we're going to be at $413,000. So I estimated that, you know what, in 2025, we'll be at 415. Here's the catch with this fund. It expires December 31st, 2026. So these monies here, the faucet gets turned off. Right. So, but at the end of the day, here's what we're going to spend those monies on. And this is what we do with the discretionary sales tax dollars, right? AC improvements for town hall and library, some PLC switch gears, front entrance for the doors, road and bridge work, We're gonna look at I guess a Gator, all-terrain vehicle that goes back and forth on the beach. Replace some older vehicles. You remember the Axon body cameras that all the police have? Well, that's like a 5-year agreement. Well, we use this money here to pay for that year. Same thing with Flock, police related, a beach utility vehicle. So that's what we're going to do with that money. So here's what's going to happen. Let me go back one. So we're anticipating that we're going to get $415,000 from the state of Florida. I'm assuming that we're going to get about $17,000 of interest income. Okay. And I'm going to pull $270,000 from this fund's reserves, which are right in here. See, 672, they have $671,000 of excess reserves. I'm pulling $279,000 to pay for these capital equipment. And so at the end of the day, we'll have, after we do that, I'm anticipating that our balance will be $392,000 at the end of FY25. Still healthy, but keep in mind, it ends December 26th. Now, we don't have to spend it all by that day, but the valve that keeps on filling this bucket ends on that day. And wasn't our decision. It was more West Palm Beach's decision when they enacted this discretionary sales tax fund. They put a date to end of December 31st, 2026. So
They can renew it. Yeah.
You can extend it.
So they just, so when David refers to West Palm Beach, you meant the county. So the local communities requested the county put it back on the ballot to keep it going. County said, that's really nice, but no, we're not going to do that. So we're not moving forward at all. And the schools went ahead on their own because the schools were included in this too, to pay for their capital needs. School decided we're going to go out on our own. The county doesn't want to do this and have this type of sharing with local government. They're going to do their own thing to address transportation. It's over. They've already made that decision that they're not going to bring it forward. So it does end in 26. There's no interest on the county to move forward with it because the county has to move forward with it, not us locally. So they basically cut us out and said no more. So bad decision. I'll put it out there, but that's what they decided.
So after this date, right? After this date, all these kind of expenditures, which are general fund expenditures in the future, right, will come out of our general fund and not the discretionary fund. Again, another reason why we look forward, maintain our millage in good times and bad, so that we have reserves there to replace needed equipment.
So are they going to lower the sales tax rate by 1%? Aha. Yeah, you would. That's what
they said.
they increased
That
it
all our
1%.
residents of the county as a whole we need to take that tax burden off them, but the school is going to impose theirs and then they're going to come up with their own and put it back in to address roads. So it won't change, just we don't get any money. The local governments, we represent pretty much all of the wealth and the people, the population where all this work is, but they chose to move in this other, but I wouldn't anticipate seeing a sales tax rate back at around 7% or 6.5%. I think they're going to replace it with their own. The school will replace it with theirs.
So
They're not
again,
gonna stop spending.
yeah. So again, so we have that on our radar. We realize that going forward. And so this went into our 5-year plan of saying, hey, this well dries up. Let's just start, let's being proactive about it. Now we're going to jump after that one. So we looked at the general fund. We looked at the discretionary sales tax. Now we're looking at the building fund, separate fund. Again, it's doing extremely well, right? The interlocal agreement with Gulfstream continues to benefit this fund. The fund transfers money back to the general fund to cover its overhead. Okay. general insurance, our time, staff's time, Linnell this time. Yeah, commission, all those costs we allocate. And so this right here is our estimated revenues. Now, this fund here, as Dr. Greenwald had mentioned, right? They can only have so much in their reserves. So that's why what we're starting to do here is we're starting to pull some money from their excess reserves, right, in 2025. What will that, so I'll get to that in the next slide. But here is their expenditures. We've got, you know, some personnel, operating expenditures, capital outlay. We'll go into that next. That 500,000, that's what they transfer back into the general fund. But it's very well proportionate. It's proportionate with the fluctuations of building permits as they go up, as they go down, because we have a lot of contractual services there, operating expenses. That's where that CapGov invoices will be. Now, what are they doing? This right here, I'm anticipating that by the end of 2024, they're going to have $2.9 million in excess funds. That represents about 562 days of operating expenditures. That's a little bit much, right? So what we're going to do is, our plan is, we're going to pull $400,000 out of that fund. And this is the improvements that they need, as well as what that area needs. So we got, they're going to do some office improvements, repaving. You know, a lot of construction trucks drive in and out of the town. And so we're repaving. We're looking at repaving not only this strip here, but behind the town hall here, as well as the library. A lot of heavy equipment comes in here, construction related. So we thought that was reasonable. They have a little bit of software upgrades that they want to do. And they also have some of their own specialized CAD type of system software that they're gonna anticipate. But we're watching this. It's healthy. And again, you're right. We have to maintain a building department in good times and bad. And so having this excess money to draw from when construction remodeling starts to slow down a little bit is a wise thing.
So Gulfstream is doing very well.
Yeah.
Now, these reports, it says calculated as of 9/30/24.
So that just means we.
Of what period of time? It says activity through what month?
About 3 weeks ago,
Yeah, I mean,
As of when?
Yeah.
As of 3 weeks ago, so
Yeah.
it's sometime in June.
say end of May.
yeah,
May.
yeah, end of May. Yep.
So you project the next year a drop off of somewhat with Gulfstream.
Yeah, we're actually seeing it here as well, right? But there's always this delay, okay? Because even though we have two major projects going on here almost diagonally from Town Hall, you see they tore down the structure and they're going to start rebuilding it. To determine the permit value of that, it comes in phases. And so it comes in sporadically, but we cover a lot of our fixed costs and a lot of the variable costs and the peaks and the valleys. We outsource that to CapGov, which does all the inspection services and permits and whatnot.
Well, I've been looking at the expense side. That's it's about $800,000 of revenue, and the only thing that's brought out in the building department as far as expenses I could see is the subcontract inspections for Gulfstream is
Yeah.
running, I'd say about $130,000 a year. Is there anything other in the expense side that you could point to that's directly related to Gulfstream?
No, what would be directly related to Gulfstream would be that.
That's it.
I think I think we broke out the GL by subcontracted inspection services dash GS.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
That's the only line.
Yeah.
And we really didn't have to, as we said in the past, didn't have to hire any new
Right.
employees, nothing. So.
Right.
And that goes right to the bottom line, which is about $600,000.
Yeah.
Nice.
As well.
Which isn't totally clear, but it's I don't want to say baked in there, but there's the administrative cost to doing it for them that we don't
Yeah.
specifically call out in any one.
There's something
particular
else
line.
there, but it's very.
Jeff's time, the same thing that the building department pays to us.
Mm.
We gotta have legal review things. I have to participate. The commission works on things. Staff, that fixed cost is working on Gulfstream too. But we don't call out what percentage and stuff. So it's in there. So there's another set of costs that are associated with that contract. And again, I think you guys were talking, I had stepped out, but you know, you pull a permit today, but you could be doing inspections for them 18 months from now into a different fiscal year that you have to be cognizant of.
There's no
everything.
hard dollars other than the subcontract that we had to.
Right, right. So I mean, it was good. They liked the relationship. It's easy for them. It's easy, works well for us to fill that void and capacity issue. And we could expand easily to them. We had been asked by other communities to do that. We were a little bit reluctant at this point. Just because we don't want to get ourselves into other jurisdictions and political structures. You know, it has to be pretty stable and calm. Gulfstream asked, it's easy, it's simple. They were already in a Delray environment, so coming to us made sense. We could go faster, quicker. We're used to working in a small environment. Most of our staff and CAP is coming from the north, so it was easy to bring them in. Other communities could be tricky, further distances, politics, things of that nature.
Good, thank you.
So now what we're gonna do is, right, yeah, your building fund is pretty simple. You know what I mean? You have the revenues that come in and they're gonna pull money from their excess reserves to do some right here is capital outlay. That's where that money is gonna go right there. This right here, as the town manager said, that's their contribution to cover town overhead. Every year, as part of the audit, I've got to substantiate that value. And so what we do is we take a proportion of all the administrative commission overhead costs and we allocate it to this department, which is all reasonable. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the water fund. Okay. So here you can see, as you're aware, the water fund, we have baked in here, part of our 5-year plan was to get these funds, water and sewer, self-sustaining. We wanted to, the goal was to get it off of the general funds dole per se, okay? And so that's what we're doing in 2025. We're able to successfully do that, and here's why. This is the second year that, this is the first year that you see this intergovernmental. We are not contributing. The general fund is not contributing to the water fund from ad valorem tax dollars. You remember in the very first slide, I said, hey, part of your ad valorem tax dollars included debt service funds that were collected in the general fund and then transferred over to the water fund. We're not doing that anymore. So you can see that source of revenue went down by $415,000. We're pulling a little bit of money here from reserves to bridge the gap. But the reason why we're able to do that is, let me go to one slide real quick. Look what's happened to our debt service. Our debt service here, as you recall, in 2024, our debt service went down by $370,000. In 2025, it goes down by another $375,000. So we maintain our debt service is about $830,000 per year, probably until I think 2020. I can't see that far. 2037 maybe. But look at these interest rates that we have on these loans. 2.8, 1.1, 3.4. These right here are those state revolving loan funds that local governments were able to capitalize on to lower that cost. So that's a good thing. Currently, as of FY25, we're anticipating that the total outstanding loans will be about a little bit over $5 million. But let me go back here. So here's what's happening with our revenue. These are gallons. This is how many gallons we're selling. You can see like in certain times here, there are obviously peaks and valleys because of, people coming into our town, leaving, a lot of seasonality, but it's doing very well. This right here, when I convert those, so right here, we're at about almost 8%. Our people are using approximately 8% more water and about a little bit over 1% more irrigation these days when you compare it to 2023. Remember, I'm in 2024 right now. I have actual data through the first 3 cycles. I'm forecasting what I think the next 3 cycles will be to get us to the year end. But right now, that's what it's looking like. So these right here, you're looking at gallons. Now, when I look at the dollars, this is what it translates into, right? We're anticipating about 10.9% through the first 3 cycles of 2024. Well, remember, we raised rates by 8%, plus you have the increase in consumption. And so that's what we're seeing here. And so when we look at the expenditure side of life, we have obviously operating expenses, chemicals for the water. We have capital outlay here. We're increasing that a little bit, but look at where the dollar goes to. It's pretty well allocated. You have your personnel services here. You have your operating expenditures here. You got your capital outlay. You got your debt service, and then you got your interfund and contingency. Obviously, we've always added a little bit of contingency to this fund. But why this fund is doing well is because you can see the debt service, right? Another $379,000 reduced. That's not going to the bottom line.
Well, our conservation program isn't doing that well.
Well,
Well, it does. What we did is that if we recall, when we went through that process, was about 3-4 years ago, because those high end users are going to really pay the premium when you get over a certain volume. That didn't deter the use. They just kept on, everything stayed the same, but that's where the conservation is the hitting the checkbook, but it hasn't had a real big grip on the use. So.
yeah, and not that though, but we are proactively, like every utility should be doing, changing out older, outdated meters, getting a little bit more accuracy on that. And so it is very, very successful. But right now, our preliminary budget anticipates, as planned, another 8% rate increase. Why? Well, because this one's almost there, right? So we're throwing money into capital needs that are needed in a water plant. But at the end of the day, it's almost able to sustain itself. We think one more cycle of an 8% rate increase, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that cross line where we're not having to pull from reserves. Okay. Well, hold on. Let's go ahead and look at the reserves. Let's go ahead and look at what this fund has in excess dollars that's accumulated. So right now, at the end of, and I'm sorry, I didn't change that there should be 24. At the beginning of FY24, we had $2.8 million of cash, right? We anticipated that we're going to be pulling $375,000 out of that to break even. That gave us about 214 days of cash. Typically, you want to be at about 150. Now, what does this calculation mean? This calculation means that if we stop bringing in money, totally stop bringing in money, we have enough cash to last us 214 days. Same. So what we're looking at here is these right here are the capital improvements that we have to do, $560,000, garage door, membrane, you have ports and seals that have to be replaced, SCADA software, replace the decasifier. Things, obviously, any asset the town owns, there's constant maintenance. And so at the end of the day, what we're looking at is by the end of FY25, even though we're pulling money out of reserves, we'll still have about 131 days of cash on hand. And and again, what this is benefiting from is a lower debt service. So that's good news. Now let's go to the sewer fund.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I looked at this too closely. I'm sorry. You have a a shift differential pay, $325,000. Prior years was 30,000.
Yep.
What, just explain to me what that is.
Sure. So what that is, so in the past, if you work in the second or third shift, okay? So we have our water plant operates 24 hours. If you work that second shift, then you got a 3% increase in your pay. If you worked the night shift, you got a 6% increase in pay. The way we used to account for it was we used to just put that additional 3 and 6% into that column called differential. Now what we're doing is we're looking and we're trying to say, well, wait a second, what does it cost us to run the second shift? What does it cost us to run the third shift? So we're putting all of their salaries in that line item. So instead of the differential, you have all of their labor going into that. So you should see on the top, regular salaries and wages going down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Just curious.
But I mean, overall, you can see here charges, let me see, your expenditures. So right here, you can see personnel services, right? That's your retirement, that's your health insurance, that's your compensation. That is all of your shift differential, right? It went up, health insurance. So it looks like it's going to go up about a little bit over 10%. That's what we're anticipating. 5% of that is salaries and related. The department is fully staffed. We're not anticipating having to add any more staff. So. Last fund is the sewer fund. As you can see, what do I have here? I've got grant dollars, right? You remember we have 250,000. I think it's going to be closer to 270 to $275,000 that we're going to get from appropriations from the state of Florida. Plus, we have to use the remaining ARPA funds. So that's what we did here. We pulled the remaining ARPA funds plus the $250,000, $250,000 state grant into this account. So we record that as revenue. Then you have your charges for service, and then you have your investment earnings. So they're at about $2.45 million in FY25. Again, matching the sewer side of life, we see a constant increase. If you recall, water was at about a little bit over 10%. Sewer is about 9.7%. When I convert that to dollars, it's at about almost a 12% increase. These right here are the expenditure side of life. Okay. So we have operating, our operating expenditures for the sewer side. Remember, we have no labor in the sewer side, right?
Mhm.
Because we do all of the pumping and we send it to Delray Beach, right?
Is that the $1 million charge?
Yeah.
What is that exactly for?
For the operating expenses?
Yeah, well, the sewage treatment.
Yeah,
City of
sewer treatment.
Delray,
Yeah.
$1 million.
Yep. Yeah, they treat all of your sewer.
We pay them $1 million.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so, yeah, and so that's what that is. We are anticipating obviously an annual increase from them as well. So we bake that in there. The other thing too is what I did is I added, here's the capital outlay. We'll go over the capital that we're anticipating to spend this year. But I also added another $125,000 for contingency.
So their bill has a rate that they charge us times the X and Y's.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And it's reasonable to believe that they're not my favorite people, obviously, so.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Good contract.
Yeah, yeah.
That contract, it spells out all the details, how much it can increase year over year to anticipate cost of, and basically Delray, we're basically moving through their system. It's the Southeast Regional Treatment Facility. It's like Delray Boynton border area. So it treats multiple communities. We're just using their, if you will, passing through, if you will. So it's all baked into it. And we have a huge lift station with a meter at the end and it counts everything out. So, but the contract's strong and very specific. So it doesn't get into maybe some of the issues we saw with
How often does it renew? Is there a,
it goes through 2030, I believe, 2029, something like that. So we're in good shape now, but eventually we're gonna have to, that contract will probably be renegotiated or be renewed.
okay, some other comments, but I'll leave them to myself. Okay.
Okay.
So with water and sewer, and this is following the plan that the consultants and everybody laid out several years ago. But it's my understanding that, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but roughly over that period, both water and sewage rates are going to go up by like, well, will have gone up by like 40% or something like that in order to make all these accounts balance, which they should do by the end of next year is that about right? Just for
Yes, yes, yeah.
people who may have forgotten what the history of this was?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and again, this is what an enterprise fund, water and sewer, to run properly should be self-sustaining. It's designed that way. The reason why is the amount of water you use and what you're charged versus the amount of water this person uses is charged. It's there to be fair, right? And so that's why it's based on a gallon and a base charge. So yes.
Yeah, well, there's fixed costs and variable costs, and
Yep.
you're trying your best to make that work. So-
Yes. Yeah.
But the
absolutely.
point is, I think for everybody that you're following the plan and all that sort of thing.
Yes, 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 yep. So we're almost done. So you can see this fund here, right? It has a healthy fund balance. $3 million, right? $3 million. Well, we're getting close to it, but what we're anticipating is, well, are we going to take this account to zero? Is that, so we're balancing all that, right? So there are a lot of things that we have to try to balance, and we're doing that. But right now, other than the $3 million sewer lining, these right here are the projects that we have anticipated, $450,000. We have healthy cash, and we're accumulating it for that big sewer project that we have to do. Here's the rest of the calendar, and that's it in a nutshell. I know our. Okay, sorry. Okay.
Another needs to see you gotta sign the minutes.
Yeah, okay. But at the end of the day, so to recap big picture, staff's idea is in good times, let's go ahead and let's keep the millage rate the same. Okay. That way we can replenish some of the reserves in the general fund. Because in the next couple of years, we see that discretionary sales tax dries up. That's out of here. Remember, we pulled $4 million to build something that's extraordinary.
Mhm.
We are still able to put $1 million squirreled away. Remember, my first slide, I had $300,000 as a contingency, and I got $600,000 as going to our reserves. Well, if we don't use that contingency, all that goes back to our reserves to replenish it. We want to maintain the course of the water and sewer fund rate increases for this last year, because we're saving money on the debt service side of life, and we need to accumulate a little bit more money to be able to pay for the sewer lining projects. So in a nutshell, that's the goal for 2025.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I'm new here, and the gentlemen that are here are very, very knowledgeable. I'm very green here. My only comment is, if I were running this as like my condo association, I would make the sewer lining the number one thing to worry about, as opposed to rehabbing the old firehouse. That's what I would do if I ran this like I do my condo association. I'm more concerned about that than having a venue. That's my only comment.
Yep. And in governmental accounting, I've got to make sure that fire, that's general fund. Sewer, that's separate, right? That's the enterprise fund, but again, we're working on that. It is on our top priority, with no doubt. In May, we just did an extraordinary thing here, and I think we're going to do an extraordinary thing with the sewer. We're just trying to plan it out with the A1A. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you have kind of a logistical mess on your hands with that one right now. That's, but there's no way they could trail FDOT. I mean, I was gonna say, it's like, you know, when we do projects in my world, I mean, while we have things tore up, we try to do as much as when things are tore up as we can.
Working with FDOT's a little bit different, a little tricky.
Sure.
Not that what you're explaining isn't either. Generally, they just don't like people in their work zone or near them. No, it's all public. Yep. Lining company would be private. Yep. And they would have to have a permit with FDOT. I mean, they could. I mean, it's something if, you know, say if the grant dollars really jump up or SRF moves quickly, we want to start tackling it. We could trail it a bit. Especially in the off season, I think we have that ability. I think in season, putting another project out there. I don't know if I want to take those phone calls. Maybe Linelda will. Just kidding. It's going, yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of a headache and,
And imagine doing that on the side streets as well. I mean, when people start to see a construction truck, they're gonna go crazy.
I mean, the calls have already started just on the silt fence. So once we start construction, they start stopping traffic and then our seasonal family comes back, then it's gonna some upset folks, you know, and we'll have to work our way through it and we'll direct them directly to FDOT, but you know.
Are
we'll
we
try-
really delayed? It seems like they were supposed to start in April.
Oh, yeah, well, that's FDOT.
Okay.
I mean, silt fence, I mean, it's gonna take them another 2 weeks to get that done. Then they're gonna start all the way back up at Linton, start doing that part of the project. So it's gonna, my fear is that they're not even gonna get to us until it's the throes of season, and then they're gonna start tearing apart A1A in front of us. I mean, Linton will create enough of a headache, but we can generally get folks to Spanish River a bit, but that gets stacked too. So we're hopefully, you know, we asked FDOT to work with Boca and the signal to extend that movements to get folks out, but the sidewalks will sort of be open. I mean, it's just gonna be, they're trying to put that at the right of way just to kind of like set like, you know, the slope stake line, like you can't go any further in construction than those fencing. Anything in between is fair game. But again, they still haven't even mobilized to start doing the nasty stuff yet. And again, that's probably not till August. So I'm guessing like when they start really getting into it, it's going to come, you know, like October, November, and that's when everyone shows up and we'll have our seasonal, but maybe we'll close the road down and it'll be like we could do a parade, you know? If traffic's backed up anyway, just close A1A down for a couple of days for our anniversary celebrations and, you know, we'll have a street fair. We'll just walk through a construction zone.
I think you guys did a great job. I mean, it was very, very informative. I mean, you guys run a tight ship. I mean, the numbers are good.
Yeah.
I mean, I just appreciate everything you guys do for us as residents. As a resident.
Well, you know, it like anything in government, there's if you pull something from this one, you gotta, you know what I mean? And so there's this constant balancing and so.
I mean, yeah, it's a good year. We're able to again, work the plans, as I said at the beginning. Our next step, just to let everyone know, is July 23rd. The commission will establish the maximum millage rate, which will be the 3.8575. All that does is we can't go any higher.
Right.
So that sets the top end. As we move forward, if things change or whatever, the commission can move it all the way till the second public hearing in September, which would be September 18th.
Yep.
Can't do the 17th because the county set their second public hearing on that date. So it'll be the 18th of September. So from now to that date, we'll see a few things. We may call you in haste with healthcare or something. If one of those numbers comes, it's really peculiar and odd, we'll need to have you guys come back in and get some recommendations on that. If everything kind of holds, you know, we'll see how some of the summer unfolds and some of the pricing, insurance. We've got some preliminary numbers, so we've got those in there. So like all of the workers' comp, property, auto, all that stuff is already kind of contemplated in there, flood insurance. So really the last big one is health. We've been, knock on wood, been doing well and tracking pretty safely on those numbers. I'm again anticipating an increase. Can't imagine we'll get yet another zero year lift. So we'll see those type of minor increases. Ours, yeah, we went up about, everybody was saying they were up 200% in some of these condos. We were up 40, 50%, but we saved it on workers' comp. We had,
Large percentage.
Yeah, it's 600,000, excluding health insurance, and so.
For the whole.
Highland Beach, yep. Property, assets, lift stations, vehicles. Yep.
I mean, we go out.
That's my point.
Yeah, we're part of the government.
Pool.
program.
Yeah, we're a pooled agency, so basically we share our costs with 40 other municipalities in the state of Florida. So we kind of, and they kind of hedge the premiums over time. So one community could get a spike in workers' comp, but the rest of us don't. Kind of keeps the system-wide costs down. So we've done pretty well through that. Right, and you guys should look at a concern. There probably is, but you guys, condo folks, I feel for you. You're getting battered. The last couple of years, you've been getting battered from insurance, research, reserves. And then you're finding, just to kind of give you a prelude to the final kiss, we're starting to go out and look at fire systems that aren't operable in a lot of these condos. That's going to be the last little piece that you're going to have to fix fire pumps and yeah, yes, Seagate, you guys have been getting it good. I wish I could help you on that, but, yeah, so we're almost, I think everything's coming to, as David kind of alluded to, I think we're getting over that major hurdle where all that pain of assessments and cost increase, I think it should start to slow and calm a bit. Cause I just don't see it being as sustainable to be in these triple digit it can't, it's gotta, well, at some point, I mean, we're seeing this other things, especially, insurability. If once you go through the research program and your electrical systems, that's where the insurance is going to start looking, okay, you're building safe, you're putting money away. We're not going to have to take a whole building and take all the liability hits at a service side. That scared the insurance company. And again, the insurance market, that reinsurance market, that's really because the reinsurers have insurance too. So it's a 3-level pie. And that's where you used to have all your pension funds where the reinsurers insurer, and they started pulling out because they just kept on getting battered by the hits on claims. So that's starting to look better. They're seeing out in the marketplace. But again, it's across, I know we want to say it's a state issue. This is a national issue, really. So all states are dealing with this. Insurance is just not bad in Florida. It's hitting California. It's hitting Texas. It's hitting the Midwest. It's hitting the plains. It's a nationwide issue. Not the company, but, the insurance itself is across.
All right.
Yep.
I didn't realize that Ron was going to have to leave before the end. But before we adjourn, again, thanks for excellent presentations. Very helpful as usual to our understanding. Before we adjourn, are there any actual recommendations that this group wants to make to the commission? I know historically some, if not all, the commissioners watch these meetings, like online eventually, and they'll be able to see the discussion. As everybody serving here knows, we don't make any decisions, but we can make recommendations to the commission. So before we adjourn, and since we still have a quorum, does anybody feel that we should be making any formal recommendations? There are 2 potential things that I can think of. I don't know that we want to proceed. One was several people mentioned relining the sewers a priority. However, the logistics were going to be in terms of financing it, whether it be with cash or with a state loan or however it was going to work to be determined, but to move that up the priority list. And then the second thing that the commission might find helpful, I think, if we feel like we know enough and are willing to make the recommendation, would have to do with, you know, the proposed budget and the proposed potential millage rate and whether anybody has any significant either endorsements or criticisms or whatever that might be to help, again, give our input to the commission on a more formal basis. So is anybody interested in furthering that? If not, we can just leave it and have no official report and they can, you know, glean it from whatever Marshall says and so on and so forth. Any thoughts?
Well, the budget to me is strictly, I focus on reserves and I look at generating more money for the reserves. It's like any other financial statement I've ever seen for 40 years is cash flow. And everything on it seems to be in order. I've asked a few questions on some line items. It makes sense. It seems to be reasonable in almost everything I've seen. My few comments were just for me, understanding what it means wasn't meant to be other than that. So if the budget, as I see it, hits with a plus at the end and 400,000 got increase in the reserves, it's a number. I've been on this board for a long time, and every meeting I've said, cash, reserves, don't go, make sure it's good. We're down to 5 million. We're at 10 million. We know we spent it very well. Is 5 million enough? Hopefully it is. I can't see why it shouldn't be. And I was going to make a comical comment that if we want to increase the millage rate, it would go right into the increase in the reserves. That's the way I look at it. So it's that's the only reason I would it's a thought process which maybe there's one person believes, and that's me. But I would not increase the millage rate at this point, not at all. But the reserves at 5 million, and the way we allocate it is that we changed the way we allocated a couple of years ago. Great idea, it works. It's based on the operation. It's fine. So I don't have any reason to make we want to bless the budget. I'm not so sure we should do that because there's still going to be work being done until June. What date did you say is July 23rd? Is that?
July 23rd is statutorily July 23rd. We set the maximum rate.
I
And then we have
see.
2 public hearings in September.
Okay, fine. So that those are my comments, which means no comment. Maybe it's a good idea to put ourselves on record regarding the sewer project.
I think it's up to the group. Again, we don't decide anything for the, you know, from a legal standpoint. We recommend. We can do either that in the form of taking votes and having formal recommendations, or it can just be gleaned from there watching, you know, the meeting and or Marshall typically, or David will comment on the financial advisory board's meeting and some of the informal, if you will, comments that were made during the meeting. So I'm not pushing for it. I'm just asking. It's one of the things we can do. We certainly don't have to do. We're a little reluctant to do too much in the sense that, you know, I wasn't sure. I didn't realize that Ron was going to be, that he had a flight to catch before the end of the meeting.
Well, one of the things that I just actually had a conversation with a client about this, when you look at some of these spending issues and we talked about it earlier, a lot of organizations, a lot of industries out there right now, money's tight. But what you do is you look at to say, okay, what's the risk assessment on spending? So you take your spending and you take your spending based upon the need and you put a risk factor on that need. I look at the sewer relining project and say, okay, what is the risk on that? Well, the risk on that is we have a failure, which creates a sinkhole, which creates another problem, another problem, another problem. So it's like delaying it could compound the cost of it because we're actually creating another issue by doing it. It's like the weakest link, right? And you start playing whack-a-mole to get all these things fixed. So if there is a way to coordinate it, and for those of you who are watching, I'm sorry. It's like if there's going to be an inconvenience to this to the township, you rip the scab off. You say, okay, let's just get this done, because you're going to have one season of complaints already about A1A. They're going to call you. So why not just rip the scab off, get it done, and then the next season you could actually exhale and say, okay, at least this disruption of things in the road are gone. And I think the amount of disruption you're going to have on these side streets, on the arteries coming off A1A is going to be minimal anyway, based upon relining. You're not digging up, you're not trenching, you're not doing what they're doing at A1A. So my opinion, which is only my opinion, I would accelerate the sewer relining just to avoid future risk and actually get it done. Because the disruption on A1A is going to take away from the disruption in the neighborhoods. People are going to look at it as the same. We have to get the sewers done. You're doing water drainage and everything on A1A. Why not take care of the sanitary situation at the same time? My opinion.
I just want to say that since the cracks are at the north end and the construction for the road is going to be at Linton, which is the south end. Other way around, I'm sorry. Okay, let's start at the south end because the construction's at the north end and get it started.
To that point,
Or maybe,
no. Go ahead.
well,
No, you bring up. a
I'm
good
very
point,
concerned about
because
those cracks
Bingo.
environmentally and we're having sewage problems. We're on Bel Air Drive as well. I've noticed that. So I'm saying the south end definitely should start.
Well, it was brought up earlier, saying the vibration and the disruption from the FDOT project could actually cause a fracture or an issue with the sewers. So why not start on the south side? push to
Start
the
where
north?
we're, yeah,
Yeah.
like he said, there's going to be a mess anyways. Who's going to know the difference? That's why I said, I know it's a different fund. I'm learning, I'm new at this board, but rehabbing a building as opposed to fixing our sewer lines, I would put sewer lines as the number one priority item right now in terms of what this board should be thinking about.
Yeah, every repair of a crack is 10 times greater than it would cost if you were putting a new line in at that point. So it's very disruptive to have a crack.
And it's infrastructure. Infrastructure, I think the community here, we have a very smart community. And I think if they understand it, you're putting your best foot forward on infrastructure to assure sound infrastructure for everybody. I think they would say, okay, if we have a food truck venue that's pushed off a season to make sure our infrastructure for services is solid, I think that's prudent.
Okay, I think, to make it simple, in the absence of any sort of a formal recommendation, perhaps it can be passed on that the consensus of the people remaining at the end of the meeting certainly was that we should be moving forward expeditiously. We don't want to define the logistics for anybody because we don't know enough, but that the sewer relining project should move forward expeditiously and be placed in this year's budget and move forward is in a manner to be devised. I think we can also, you can come out of it again without any formal recommendations that, correct me if I'm wrong, there were no serious disagreements certainly with anything that was presented in the preliminary draft budget as we looked at it today, and also that the group was happy to see that there were no blemishes on last year's financial report. Is that fair? We good? Any other comments before we adjourn? If not, let's consider ourselves adjourned at 12:23. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.